Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I am going to be doing a Kato Polyclay review. So I will start off with the bads because I think we should get them out of the way. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to Kato Polyclay is the smell. Now, this doesn't affect me. I haven't actually noticed the smell. I've found that it does have a smell, but it's no stronger than any of the other brands, and it just smells like a new shower curtain basically, but it doesn't bother me. But after looking around the internet for a few years, I have found that a lot of other people struggle with the smell, especially when you first open it. So just open this up. It's not like you're going to be able to smell it, but a lot of people say that it smells like a fresh vinyl shower curtain or a new Barbie doll. That's basically what it smells like, they say, and a lot of them have a lot of trouble, and I'm really sorry about that because the clay is really nice. I found that Cindy Leacher from Polymer Clay Tutor unfortunately finds the smell really bad. It was a little disappointing because I was looking forward to using the Kato Polyclay a bit more, but it did bring to my attention that a lot of you have a problem with Kato Polyclay. So if you're going to buy this clay, maybe get one block first and then just test to see if you can deal with the smell, because it doesn't bother me whatsoever. I mean, I'm sitting here with this and it's not bothering me at all. I can't actually smell it. So just check before you go and buy a whole lot that you can deal with the smell. There's no indicators that you won't be able to deal with it or that you will be able to deal with it. It doesn't really matter if you have a strong sense of smell or anything like that. It's just that some people react differently, I guess. So that's the biggest problem with Kato Polyclay I've found, because it's unpredictable and some people will be able to deal with it and some people won't. So that's a bit of a problem, but I guess you're always going to have problems. Another one that a lot of you have found is that it is harder to condition compared to a lot of the other brands like Premo. So this is a fresh block of Kato, and this is a fresh block of Premo. So they look different, but these are the two blocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off a piece here and squish it, and so you can see that the Premo is quite easy to squish. It's quite soft. It's not so soft that it's like Play-Doh, like Sculpey 3, which I really don't like, and I have done a review on that. But it's pretty easy to squish. So now I'm going to break off a Kato piece, about the same size hopefully, and we'll see how easy that is to condition. So I'm immediately noticing that I'm having a lot more trouble. Now usually I'd use my acrylic roller, but this is a good way to tell the difference between the two. So I'm having to push really hard and I'm not getting anywhere as fast as the Premo. So that's definitely a downside to the Kato. I have a conditioning tutorial that I have already done where I compare Premo Professional, Kato Polyclay and Premo Sculpey, and they're all fresh blocks of clay, so you'll be able to see what a fresh block looks like and the differences between the three when you're trying to condition. Now, you can fix this with the Kato Polyclay. So I'll just pop this back over here, just squish it back on here. What you can do to warm it up before you try to condition it is you can take a mallet, and I like to just use my solid acrylic roller, and you can give it a really good bash. So excuse me, this is going to make a little bit of noise. Okay, so hope your ears are okay. But that is basically what I like to do to condition my clay and get it a little bit warmed up before I work with it, and then it moves a lot faster. So there you can see that after a little bit of bashing, this is moving a lot faster. So that's what I like to do with my firm brands. I do that with Fimo Professional as well, as I show in the conditioning video, and that should make your clay a lot softer, especially if you're working in a cold climate. Now, just another thing, I like Premo and Kato equally, so both of them I really like, but each of them have goods and bads. Premo I can't work with in the summer here, it gets too hot. So I like to work with Kato in the summer because it's basically the same texture as Premo would be in cold weather. And then I like to work with Premo in winter where I can't work with the Kato because it just becomes too hard. So this is my summer clay, this is my winter clay. And that's basically how I like to use Kato and Premo, and that's how I recommend you use them because it will just give you a wider option range. So that's the next really big bad side, but it's easily fixed by just giving it a good bash. Now another thing is that compared to Premo, Kato has a relatively small colour range, and because of the way the colours are, so I'm just going to lay these out for you to see, because of the way the colours are, you have to use them, here, let me move that around for you. You have to use them mixed with a colour recipe. You can't just use them straight out the packet for most of the colours. Some of the colours you can use straight out the packet, but most of them you can't. Otherwise you'll get a really ugly, cheap plastic look, which I'll show you in a minute. So I'm just busy laying out all the colours. So there's a fair amount. You can mix all of the colours of the rainbow that you want. And here's some other ones. So they're separated into 3 categories. You have the metallics. So I'll bring those out for you to see. So these are the 4 metallics. You have a silver, a pearl white, a copper and a gold, and these you can use on their own if you want. And also an upside, which I'll be talking about later, is they have a really high concentration of microparticles. So I'll talk more about that in a little while. Then the next range are the translucents, and the only real translucent is just this one. Most of the colours are fairly translucent to a certain degree, which is what gives them their horrible plastic look if you don't mix them, but the only real translucent is the Kato translucent. And now if you go and have a look at my translucent clay article, I provide a link to it. I could do a comparison between all of the translucents across all of the brands that I can find, and you'll see how bad the Kato translucent is. It's not translucent unless you go paper thin, and it also has a really horrible yellow tint. So out of all the translucents there are, this is my least favourite. But then again, I really like the micas, so there's just ups and downs. Then you have the neutral colours, which is the black and white, which are the normal ones, and then you've got a skin colour, and those are the neutral ones. You also have a brown here, which is also a neutral colour, and the skin colour is pretty translucent, so when you're using it you must treat it the exact same way you would a translucent, because otherwise you'll get mooning in it. The black and white and brown are opaque, so these you can all use on their own if you want. Now the primary colours, which are the slightly translucent ones, they're not completely translucent but they do have an element of translucency to them. These ones you can't use on your own. You have to mix them with something. The worst ones I found are the orange, the yellow and the red. I found that these ones are the worst ones and they look the most plasticky. And the worst one of all of them is the orange. You can't use this one on its own. It looks terrible. The best ones are the 2 blues and the purple. These ones you could use on their own if you wanted to. They still wouldn't look that great. You do have to mix. So basically, to mix your colours, you just use the universally known colour recipe, colour theory. So red plus yellow equals orange, blue plus yellow equals green, and blue plus red equals purple. So that was badly explained, so I'll just do that again. So blue plus yellow equals green, yellow plus red equals orange, and blue plus red equals purple. So you basically just do that color theory. They're all pure colors, so you don't have to worry about it becoming mud unless you mix the 3 primaries together, which are these ones. So if you mix all 3 of these together, you will get mud. So you need to be careful of that. You just won't be mixing 2 primaries at a time. So the color mixing is very easy when it comes to the Kato Polyclay, which is a great thing about it. I love it for that, which means that I can use it for canes. So here's one where I used Kato Polyclay for my caning, and you can see how detailed it is. You can see it, the colours are lovely, and you just can get some really lovely colours for it. Another example of this is my cherry blossom necklace. I have a tutorial on this and I will provide a link for that, but another example of course is my cherry blossom, where you have these wonderful cherry blossoms that are made from Kato Polyclay, and they give a lovely sharp crisp image. So if you're a caner, I highly recommend the Kato. It is the best clay by far for caning. So we went off onto the good things again, so sorry about that. But that basically is the bad things. So I'll just give you a quick summary. It has a strong smell, so you need to check that. It's harder to condition compared to the other brands. It doesn't have any pre-made colours, you have to mix your colours, and some techniques it's not very well suited for, like moulding. So if you're a sculptor, I wouldn't really recommend Kato. I'd recommend some of the other brands like Cernit or Premo, because the Kato is a little bit too hard for it. And finally, it's not very good in cold temperatures. So if you're in a cold climate all year round, I wouldn't really recommend Kato. Premo's much better. But those are basically the bad things. Now we have a really long list of the really good things. So the first thing is that Kato is readily available online, or at least that I've found. So some places that stock it are Happy Things, and that's a European one, and I'll provide a link. Fire Mountain Gems also stocks it, and that's basically where I buy my clay from. Towards Polymer Clay also stocks it, I do believe, and I'll provide a link to all of those. So it's readily available. It's also fairly inexpensive compared to the other brands. So my Kato Polyclay is cheaper than my Premo clay. And now I'm talking about when it's online. So I'm not sure what it's like for you guys offline, because I don't have a place to buy it offline. So it might be different there. But if you're buying online, it's relatively inexpensive in comparison to the other brands. Another big upside, which we talked about earlier, is that the color recipes are so much easier to mix. There's no risk of contamination if you just use basic color theory. So that's my biggest upside for this clay. It's just great for color recipes. Another great thing is that it comes in a whole bunch of liquid clay colors. And now these are a little bit hard to find. Linda's Art Spot carries them, and that's where I am buying them from now. So I'll provide a link to her shop, and she carries all of the liquid clay colours, and they come in so many colours. So you can see that I've been using them already. So they come in a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, let that focus a second, purple. So all of the primaries, and then it also comes in some neutral colours like the black, which is something that I use a lot, and I'll be using this in tutorials in the future quite a bit, because I like to use over the top of the Jessama smear, and so I like buying it from Linda's Art Spot, because they're actually very hard to find, and I found that where I used to buy them, which was Fire Mountain Gems, they're not stocking it anymore. So if you're looking for them, they'll be there. They also carry a white, and finally a translucent, which is the one that I use the most, and I know that a lot of you guys like to use this one because it is the clearest liquid clay by far so far. I haven't done a test on the new Sculpey Clear one yet. I do plan to do some testing on it, but so far the Kato liquid clay, the clear one, is very, very clear, and I love to use it for that. You can get so many effects from it like that. So that's a bit of a upside. Another thing is they also have concentrates. And so here are the Kato concentrates, and they look very similar to the normal primaries, and they also have a green. So you can see it, we have a yellow, a red, a blue, and a green. But if you look closely, you can see that these are darker than these, and the reason for that is because they have a higher color saturation than the normal colors. So you only need a tiny, 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 tiny amount to color an entire block of clay. So you need something about that round, that big, and about that thick. So that round, that thick, to color an entire block of pearl white. So whereas you would probably need to use at least a quarter of a block of clay with the normal colors to color an entire block. So I have a tutorial on using the Kato concentrates, and I'll just bring over the example over here, because it's great for your mica shifts. So here's what the example is. So these all were originally white, pearl white Kato, and I just mixed in certain amounts of Kato concentrates to mix my own colours, and then I added it to the pearl white, and you can see what a lovely, deep, rich colour it gives. And now the upside to this is that it means that your mica shifts will stay really, really strong, because the more clay that is, so I'll bring over it to show you. So these clays don't have mica particles in them. Well, these clays do have mica particles, so you can create a mica shift from the ones that have mica particles, and you can't do it from these ones. So if you add, let's say, about a quarter of block of this into here to color it blue, you're going to be diluting the amount of mica particles in here. So that means that your mica shift will be duller. So if you used the Kato concentrates, you're going to be adding less clay to the mica clay for the same amount of color saturation, and so your colors, your mica shifts will be stronger. So I do hope that I explained that. So these are great for your mica shifts. Okay, so that's another thing. Another little thing that I've noticed is that the color shift between the raw and baked clay is very little. So that's just something else that I have found. It also is non-sticky. So I'll bring that over. So some of the other brands like Female Sona are pretty sticky. Kato is fairly non-stick. Not as non-stick as souffle though. It also, being that it's not sticky, it resists fingerprints better than some of the other clays. It's also easier to roll out on the thinner settings of your pasta machine. And the reason for this is because this is a lot firmer than the other brands. So the firmer your clay, the easier it is to roll it through the thinner settings. So I'll just demonstrate that quickly. I'll roll this out on my thickest setting, like that. Then I'll take it down to my thinnest setting. Okay, so you can see that it rolled out just fine. Now, excuse the mess on the back, but it rolled out just fine on this. So now I'll do the same for the Premo. I'll take it to my thickest setting, like that. Now I'll take it down to my thinnest setting. And that one also rolled through fairly well, but you can see that it's rippled a little bit over here, and it's got some waves and things like that. And now, because these I haven't been working with, they'll both roll through just fine, but as you work through them, the Premo will start to get a little sticky because it does that in warm temperatures, and so you'll find that it'll start to ripple towards the thinner settings, which is something that Kato doesn't do as often. It will ripple a little bit, but not as much. And so that brings to mind another thing, it's a lot easier to work with in warm or humid climates, unlike other brands, which is something that I really like it for, and that's why I recommend it to people that live in really warm climates. And because of its consistency, it's also very difficult to overwork, whereas you can overwork some of the softer brands like Premo. And another thing is it's also extremely strong. Now Premo is also a very, very strong brand, but Kato is just as strong. So if you're looking for a nice strong brand to make some fairly flimsy looking things like tiny little flower petals and things like that, it will work just fine for that. It's really strong so long as you bake it properly. And finally, it is absolutely fantastic for caning. And so I went over that a little while ago, but I really need to emphasize it. This is what this clay brand was made for. If you're making canes, if you're trying to make anything above a Skinner Blend plug, I recommend Kato. It just has such a great properties for working with canes. So it's just something that I highly recommend. You need to get this clay if you're caning. It just works so well. It's easy to use. It doesn't go soft. With Premo, if you're working with a complex cane, it means that you're working with it longer, and so it means that your clay has more time to get sticky and goopy, and so it means that you can get a lot of distortion. Kato, however, because it's very hard to overwork, it will stay nice and firm throughout the process, and it will mean that your canes will look much crisper at the end. So that's just about it. That was a bit of a mouthful, so I hope that you got everything. If you didn't, I do have 2 articles reviewing Kato. One's about the problems and what you can do about them, and others about the great things and why you should buy the clay. So I'll provide links to both of those articles because they go more into depth, and it's just laid out in a better format so you guys can take in the information a little bit better. So I'll provide links to those. So I do hope that tutorial was helpful to you. If it was, please do let me know, as that's always helpful to me. And if you find these reviews helpful, then maybe suggest something that you would like me to review. If I happen to have it in the studio, then I will review it for you. And so please do leave your suggestions in the links, in the descriptions in the comment section below, and I will get to them and add them to my list. And as always, I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.